So Deb, the red dot's supposed to be on the screen, correct?
Yes, I always thought too that it should be green, meaning go, but it's red for some
It's
reason.
red.
Thank you, Lee.
It's like I'm the naughty one or something.
I can't say for long, we got a good Bible study, but I'm just curious, has this been any talk about the construction on the road here next year? That's gonna start, or?
It's on.
Jared, you want to answer this question?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the agenda items this evening. So the next step in that process would be to have an open house and then a public hearing for the improvement.
So no dates yet or anything?
Well, the earliest it would start would be next summer construction season, so potentially May, June time. Yep.
Are we ready? Sorry. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get the regular council meeting called to order, Monday, June 8th, 7 o'clock. Roll call.
Kirby Moyna. Tom Marsline. Lloyd Johnson.
Michelle Adam.
Nicole Andrea.
Lee McCormick?
Jared Bogey.
James Majay.
Deb Belter.
All right, and Pastor Paul.
No, I'm glad things are starting to open up, and I'm sure you guys are too. Yeah, it's, we're gonna do our first drive-in regular Sunday service here this Sunday here, and so next week we'll probably be back in the building, so I mean, that's a good sign, so. But I don't know if you're gonna talk about it or not, but I heard you talk about the usage of the building, and we're kind of curious about if we can use the building for the food distribution.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Okay.
That's-
But I mean, I could talk to you
That's
tomorrow.
a conversation we want to have with our emergency management director.
Oh, okay, yeah, I haven't met you yet, okay. Okay, so I wanted to start out with Deuteronomy 6. This is the greatest commandment. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. And we want to pray that we can take those words to heart. They've been with us for thousands of years. Nobody's changed the greatest commandment. And yet we seem to forget to have that as a priority in our lives, in our business, in our family life, everything. So let's pray. Lord, we are grateful that we could come together today face to face and to do the business of this community. We pray that as we gather, that you would speak to us and guide us in all that we do, all that we say, and may our decisions reflect the image in which you have created us, that this city may be a beacon of light for its citizens and for all those surrounding it. We ask you to be with this council tonight, and as they move forward in in all that they do. Amen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a video Bible study, so. All right, see you later.
All right, pledge of allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to go ahead and remove, under consent agenda, item D, the approval of the 2019 audit. Is there an approval then for the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And we do have an open forum. Mike, if you want to come on up?
Good evening, Mike Ketchmark, and I'm running to be your next Wright County Commissioner, District 5. And I want to thank the council for allowing me to speak tonight, and glad to speak to the people that are watching from a remote location and those that are interested here in City Hall today. So the current commissioner, Charlie Burrell, is retiring, so you'll get a new commissioner whether you want one or not. I currently live in Woodland Township with my wife. I've been working as a deputy sheriff in Wright County for the last 27 years, and the majority has been in District 5, and where I've worked with several residents, cities, townships, and county officials, of course, too, because I'm a county employee. So it's been good helping to resolve problems in the district in that capacity over several years, and I look forward to helping resolve things in a different capacity and serving people in a different way as a commissioner. So I want to be a good listening ear and a place for the people in District 5. Currently, I'm reassigned to patrol St. Michael, and it's unfortunate I have to have this sidebar conversation, but it keeps coming up. But the sheriff moved me for political reasons because I'm running for commissioner of St. Michael. And my question was, why is that? Because when I ran for sheriff, I worked half the county, and there wasn't any problems. And those that say, well, that was county-wide, Mike, so he couldn't move you anywhere else. Well, there's dozens of deputies that work in the courthouse and the sheriff's office, so there were other posts that were available, but nobody was interested in moving me. I didn't campaign on duty, there was no problem. I asked this sheriff this year and the past sheriff if there was any complaints of me campaigning on duty, and he said no, there wasn't any. But the best scenario that he could give was if Jason Franzen sees me shaking hands with a farmer while I'm working, that he'd call up and say, Mike Ketchmark's campaigning on duty, and then we have to investigate him. Well, the way this influences the election when you're in our business and you are moved suddenly without an explanation to the public after the majority of 27 years working in an area, the public makes up their own. So I have people that are thinking I got fired now. Regularly, people will call, or I'll see them on the street, and they'll say, Mike, I heard you got fired from the sheriff's office. So I have to continually have that conversation to clear that up, because that doesn't help when you're campaigning. But otherwise, the support's been good from one end to the other. State statute says we can put up signs on June 26th, so if you're interested in a sign, let me know. And it's been a little more difficult campaigning this year because of all the events and meetings that have been canceled, but we're still, going ahead and doing more advertising and getting the word out. I have a Facebook page. I sent most of you, I think, the announcement letter that has a Facebook page on it, but you can always reach out to me. I live just a short distance out of town, and we can talk about any questions or concerns that you might have. But I look forward to your support and hopefully your vote. Any questions tonight?
So then you're not leaving the force?
Well, Well, I'm not, no. I mean, it depends on what happens on the election day now, but now I'm just commuting every day, 50 miles round trip to St. Michael and Squad.
But if you should happen to win, then you think.
It's hard to get a clear answer on that, and I'm not pushing for that right now because I have to win first. But I'm prepared for either way and what pans out. But right now I'm concentrating on campaigning to be your next commissioner. I think the general understanding is I can't be a deputy and a commissioner at the same time. But that part I understand. Anything else? All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mike.
Next is Wright County Sheriff's Office, which we're good, unless Kevin wants to.
If you guys have any from the sheriff's office, I can answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
And I just wanted to make sure, all of you, I did email you the other month's reports, and if you didn't get them, let me know, because I'll make sure I'll get them to you.
Okay. Council. Anything?
I had 2 city council meetings that we did via telephone, 2 fire department meetings, and participated in a webinar with the governor.
Tom?
Okay. Yeah, I had Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, a multitude of teleconferences, did some COVID-19 training, on open meeting laws, League of Minnesota Cities legislative update webinar. We had our Chamber of Commerce video conference, a couple more teleconferences, and a city council workshop.
I did the telecom meetings, and that's about it, really.
I did the council meetings recently, went to a Park and Rec meeting, multiple teleconferences. Yeah, that's about it.
I had the 2 city council meetings and 1 Montrose Days meeting.
All right, Kevin?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, just kind of for information, I guess more so than anything, a couple of activity reports for March, April, and May. We're currently 16 calls ahead of where we were last year, so we've been very busy this year. Nothing really COVID related, it's just normal run-of-the-mill stuff that we've been responding to for the most part. So other than that, if there's any questions on that, I can field them. Next item is I need a motion to approve our annual report so I can get it out to the townships and get it onto our website. The annual report was sent out previously and it is included in your packet as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 annual report for Montrose Fire Department. Did a nice job on it.
I'll second that.
Nicole?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. Lloyd?
All right.
Tom?
Aye.
And Kirby?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next item I have is resignation of firefighter Keith Johnson effective May 20th of 2020. I was a member of the fire department since 2003. He served a total of 16 years, 7 months, and 28 days.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Keith Johnson.
I'll second.
I'll vote aye. Tom?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Kirby?
Yes.
Lloyd?
All right.
Motion passes 5-0.
Only other thing that's not on the agenda, any questions COVID-19 related, emergency management related? Anything along those lines that?
Well, since Pastor Paul asked, is there a plan for the fee?
Not really. I still can't let anybody into our fire station. I have to try to keep that as clean of an environment as I can. And it's difficult enough, just the way that we operate normally. So if they want to start figuring out some other options, and I'll work with Pastor Paul on maybe some of their other options and stuff. I think utilizing this space will probably become available here in the near future. But the staging part in the fire station, I don't anticipate probably being able to use the fire station, I'm guessing probably for the rest of the year almost for stuff like that. because we have to try really hard to keep that space as clean as possible. Because if we start going down, then we're gonna have bigger issues than the feed program going on and that, so. Open to any other suggestions that anybody may have about how to make it happen, so I can work with them. I'm kind of at a loss for it. The biggest problem is a lot of their volunteers are high-risk category, and for setting up and stuff, they cannot promote social distancing because they're all working in small areas, boxing things together, so it would just be extremely hard as far as that goes. And I think moving forward too, and I can work with Wendy and Deb, we should maybe get some kind of special release for when people are renting the community center or using the community center, just to protect the city's liability. There's been a lot on the Minnesota Cities about protecting your liability concerning COVID-19, and that was one of them, having them sign special documents saying, we accept that COVID-19 happens, we understand these are the regulations, we're gonna abide by the regulations. Once they sign it, if they don't abide by it, at least we have a paper that we can kind of show them and stuff, so.
If you think of it, can you get that to me before June 25th? Because they want to have possibly the chamber meeting in here on the 25th. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns as far as what almost all of my life is currently encompassing? Well, okay, only half now. So.
All right. Thank you. Perfect, Ryan. This meeting, we had a meeting this past Thursday. It was interesting to say the least, as it always is when there's members on the commission. We talked about Parks and Trails plan, our 2020 events, which we really don't have any due to COVID. So we tabled a lot of stuff. The only thing that we were talking about was, Kevin, what's your thoughts? We had talked about this at the last meeting. Not technically National Night Out, because it was moved to October. So Park and Rec is thinking about doing something in October. Think we'll be good?
If I had a crystal ball, it would have been wrong 20 times already.
Well, I mean, we're supposed to open up at 50%.
It's really gonna, and they're not gonna let National Night Out happen.
Right.
Even in small things, unless that dial that the governor has been turning is turned all the way back up. If it's still at phase 3, for some reason come October, that'll probably be one of the first things that just gets ixnayed across the country. So I'm guessing it's just gonna be kind of a stay tuned. They can kind of start planning and thinking about it.
Okay.
But I would not get any money set aside for it really at this point.
Okay. Another discussion was lacrosse at Regional Park. There is a group that it has been using the Regional Park for lacrosse practice. And they did come to the Park Commission about 2 years ago asking if the portion of the park that's over there, if they could use it for practices and stuff. They are willing to do the upkeep. They want to be able to keep their nets there. And then I believe they're going to paint it to what they need. And when they did come to us, it was Jason Tornell. He is the coach. He lives over in Pleasant Ridge Development, actually. The commission at that time was all for it, so that somebody is out there using it. But we have a new commission now, and we need to bring it to council. Commission is recommending that we do it. It was a 2-to-1 vote. So now we just need council discussion on it.
Wayne, did you have any comments on it?
Well, they called and talked to me, some gal, and she said they won't let them do it in Buffalo. I don't know why, but she wouldn't tell me why. And that would be up to the council if they want to bring that in, bring everybody in town.
I can tell you why they can't do it in Buffalo, because they want to do it at the Buffalo high schools, and it's not a school-sanctioned sport. So if they were to do it at the Buffalo high schools, it would say that the school is encouraging the sport, which the school is not, because it's a Wright County. It's Wright County lacrosse, not Buffalo high school lacrosse. So it's two totally separate.
Yeah, so it'd be up to the council. I mean, if they leave their stuff there, we're not responsible for it.
Does it hinder your ability to maintain the field at all?
Not really if they put it in the parking lot. We have to start moving this stuff, yeah.
Okay.
we'd have to set down some rules for them if we did them.
Is there any particular reason why there was a commission member against it? Just out of curiosity. There wasn't stated why?
It was just a no.
Oh, okay.
I think because they're under the understanding that it's a school, because the Buffalo schools said no, then they're saying no. But again, it's not a Buffalo school sport, it's a Wright County sport.
We also gotta remember that's not real level ground out there. Somebody gets hurt, breaks an ankle, or sprains an ankle. That'd be part of the rules we'd have to come up with. They'd be doing it on their own.
Yeah, there'd have to be some type of waiver.
Yeah.
How is this any different? I mean,
And if a random person goes up there and just starts using it?
isn't this what this is for? I mean, seriously. They came to us 2 years ago when we were in the process and the Army Corps was here. They can go off to the corner where it is leveled, where the soccer field is supposed to be. That's what they're willing to do. It's a team of like 8 or 10 kids, and they're just out there practicing. They're willing to maintain it. They're willing to do whatever needs to be done. They are members of our community. So,
Are there any of the adults?
the coach is there. I believe it's Jason Tornell who is the coach, because he's the one that came to us originally. And like I said, he lives in the Pheasant Ridge development. He's a teacher at Buffalo School, so he knows that he can't use the school property because of, then the school would be encouraging sports, and they can't do that yet, to where it's Wright County, so.
Most of the kids will be from Montrose.
It's a mix, Montrose, Buffalo. It's Wright County kids, because it's a Wright County sport, so.
Well, that's kind of a misnomer in the statement, because it says the city staff's been contacted by the community lacrosse team from Buffalo. So, I think that probably, I can understand some misconception,
Yeah,
but I have no problem with kids using the regional park out there, as long as, we have rules set in place where they move everything off to the parking lot and sign a waiver, so if someone gets injured or twists an ankle, they're not gonna come after the city.
do we have contact information to get back a hold of them?
I have a number from the lady that called me from Buffalo.
Can we have a sign or two in general put up out of the regional park that says, please clean up after yourself when you're done, basically?
Well, she guaranteed me that would.
Well, I just meant in general for anybody who uses it. Yeah.
I
We're
mean,
gonna get some trash cans out there too.
don't we have just like one of our basic park signs with the rules and regulations that we can put out there?
Yep, that's it.
The park closes at this time, you play at no risk.
We'll have to give them, I don't think there's one for that park.
No, there's not yet, but if we could just put something out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a sign out there that said, play at your own risk, does a waiver have to be set? Sign still? Okay.
Do we need to do a motion for that then?
I think you should.
All right. I'll make a motion then for the Wright County Lacrosse to go and use our regional park for their practices.
I'll second that.
Nicole?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. Kirby?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Basically, that's all we had for Park and Rec. And
What about the last thing in there, Michelle, about Sylvia having an issue with you being the liaison?
oh, on the first page,
Yeah.
Sylvia's mad at me again. So she is asking about a different liaison for the Park and Rec Commission, and the Park and Rec Commission asked, Sue specifically asked what the problem was, stating that she doesn't see a conflict between me and my daughter. My daughter is very opinionated on her own, as am I. So at the time, the commission did not want to change because, well, my daughter can't vote. And, well, she can, But Sue thinks it's fine the way it is. And Sue's the one who's new into town and just kind of learning things, so that was the discussion. Steve?
I'm going to ask you
Steve, you look,
one question. How do you do the voting this year for the people?
For what?
For you're talking about for the elections, how the vote is gonna be done?
Well, like, I know how the White House has it all set up with a new rule go by.
We will work on that.
To how they rule, how they will do that.
That will come when a little bit closer, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll come down from the governor's office,
Yeah.
I'm sure, what they're gonna do
Yeah.
for the election this
I
year.
thought that in November.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, we just have to go day by day right now, Steve, we don't know yet.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
bring that up and make sure you know about them.
We'll have a plan hopefully by then. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go to
we'll
Walmart.
learn to plan one way or the other, let's put it that way.
Well, the federal government and the
Yes,
state will
you
have a
will.
plan.
We hope. Okay,
Wendy is in touch with the county and the state weekly to keep on top of that,
Okay.
okay? She just talked in my ear.
Okay, then we'll talk to, Mike and, see, Trustee Mike.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk to him, I'm gonna talk to John over there. Yeah.
all right.
any other discussion? Deb?
On the March 10th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and Councilmember Johnson, interject if I miss anything on what they discussed, because Ms. Manson was at that meeting. They talked, it was the idea of Ryan Gritman, the city planner, to bring information regarding VRBOs and Airbnbs, whether or not we should get something on the books as far as regulating them. And the meeting was only 17 minutes long. They did discuss it, and they decided that we just don't have that need right now in the city of Montrose, so we're just gonna let it go. We are going to be talking at Wednesday night meeting about food trucks, because we have had food trucks here in town, and we don't have anything in the books as far as regulating them, and I can tell you that in other communities that I've worked in, they have strict regulations on where they can park, and they do charge them a fee to be in town. So he'll be presenting that on Wednesday night, and then sometime in the future, near future, we'll have a public hearing on it, and then depending on what the planning and zoning decides as far as the ordinance, he is bringing a sample ordinance along with on Wednesday night, and that will be coming down to the city council for approval.
Is there a general outline already that's being talked about?
He has one, yes. And I have some ideas. I had to maintain and manage the program in Big Lake, and so I have some ideas too that I'd like to implement.
So after they talk about it, this will be brought to us next month then?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, just so you know now, what we decided to do is we do have an administrative fee on our fee schedule, so that's what we've been charging them to come into town.
In other communities that have this going on.
Yes, they do, lots of them. And they all do charge them to come.
They charge way more than we do.
The city of Big Lake charged quite a bit, actually.
Is the charge going to change?
Pardon?
Is the charge going to change? What we're charging them now?
Yes, because that's just an administrative fee, just because we don't have anything on the books or in the fee schedule. And so, with that said, if it happens before the end of the year, we'll have to amend the fee schedule too. Okay? Any other questions?
Does that, I mean, not that Montrose Day is gonna happen, but food trucks come in at that time, would they have to do something then?
I don't know, because I didn't have to charge the food trucks that, because I was in charge of the special events in Big League too, that we would have at the park, and they would charge food trucks to come.
Well, and a lot of places, from what I've seen cities have, is there's a certain number of days that they get for a specific location as well, so that, you know, they are guaranteed one spot no matter what, you know, for a certain number of days throughout the year. So that's what I've seen other cities have done, so.
I know that I had 2 food trucks at the lake park in Big Lake, and they didn't charge them. They were part of the event.
That's kind of like that, because Montrose charges them,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
well, they get a portion back.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that we'll remember to talk about that on Wednesday night. Okay?
Good. Is that it?
Yes.
All right, Karen.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item in your packet this evening is the 2021 Downtown Improvement Project. I did pass out, just prior to the meeting, a slide deck of basically PowerPoint slides and I'm going to walk through that. There's a lot of information in that preliminary engineering report, which is in your packet. This is just going to summarize that a little bit more clearly. So the first page after the cover is the project area. You'll note that CASA 60 is identified. This was talked about back in March when council actually authorized the preliminary engineering report. So we do have a county component of the project simply by its designation as CASA 60. And just for everybody listening, that's basically Center Avenue from Trunk Highway 12 up to 2nd, and then 2nd from Center Avenue to County Road 12. So that's the county portion, if you will. Also includes Center Avenue, Dakota Avenue, Emerson Avenue, 1st Street, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, and 4th Street. So it's a kind of the core area, if you will, that everybody's familiar with. There is a Center Street portion north of 1st Street north as well. So that's the project area that was studied as part of the report. Next page, the components that were considered consist of sanitary sewer, water main, streets, storm sewer. The infrastructure in those areas exceeds 50 years old, particularly with the sanitary sewer. It consists of clay pipe, which is prone to inflow and infiltration and potentially backups due to settlements and sags and things of that nature. The water main currently in the majority of the area is 6-inch diameter cast iron pipe. Cast iron pipe is no longer used as a water main material beneath streets. Now there are some applications that use in buildings, but not beneath streets. Typically it's either ductile iron pipe or PVC, which is the most common material that's been used historically in the newer projects that have occurred within the city. The water main, one of the items identified there is the 2nd Street water main will need to be identified as part of the design process. We need to verify its condition. So if the water main is found to be adequate, it won't be simply replaced for the sake of replacing it. It would be an evaluation as part of the design process with that information. And then on 3rd Street, east of CASA 12, we have a service that's serving multiple residents that extends for over 200 feet. So that's the portion that is being considered for actual water main, where those properties can be serviced off of that new main. The streets, I think, for the most part, everybody recognizes the condition of the streets. Definitely some potholes, alligator cracking, things of that nature throughout the project area. Also, the majority of the streets in the project area do not have curb and gutter, although there are some locations, such as in front of this building, that do. So that's kind of the existing condition of the streets and the utilities within the project area. Street improvements, What's being considered is a total reconstruction of the pavement section. Basically what that means is rebuilding it in its entirety. The one item that I highlighted here on the street improvement slide are the proposed street widths. There's a multitude of varying street widths within this project area, and the street widths that we've identified are 38 foot for the Casat 60 portion, and 32 feet in width for the remaining portions. 32 feet is the standard residential street width within the community. That allows for parking on one side and still accommodating travel of 2 travel lanes. So, for example, if a new development came into town, that's the city street width that would be required of the developer to be constructed. Certainly, if there's strong opinions for that either way as we move through this process, certainly be open to discussing those further. Concrete curb and gutter is being proposed on all of the reconstructed street segments for a number of reasons, maintenance definitely being one of the higher priorities with curb and gutter. It allows that water to drain, it protects the bituminous edge of the roadway, and definitely extends the roadway life. Sidewalk locations, those are identified in the dashed blue lines that you see before you. Those are our current proposal. Certainly we anticipate discussion surrounding sidewalk locations because there always is. But those are the recommendations as the stage of the preliminary engineering report right now. Next section is basically the typical sections which identify the street widths and then the composition of the bituminous surfacing, the aggregate base, granular borrow. It's the city's standard street section, and the only difference between the two is the street width. Utility improvements, starting with sanitary sewer, 8-inch sanitary sewers being proposed. There is a portion of existing sanitary sewer located between 2nd and 3rd Street South that runs through residential backyards currently. That makes maintenance very difficult and is less than ideal. Our preliminary investigation as part of this report process indicated that that sanitary sewer running in those backyards could potentially be redirected to Center Avenue. And without doing any topography or anything of that extent right now, based on record drawings and measure downs, we're relatively confident of that. So that's an option that we're going to pursue to try to get that out of people's backyards and make it easier for Wayne and his staff to maintain it. But we're going to need to investigate that further as part of the design process should council move to that next step. But definitely wanted to bring it to your attention. Water main, proposed to be replaced with 8-inch water main. One item that I did want to point out is the water main loop on 3rd Street South from Emerson to Dakota. That's currently a segment of water main that does not exist, but it's being proposed to be installed as part of this project to loop it. Ultimately, what looping means is that it provides better volume and flows, not only for fire protection, but water quality as well. So the water can flow more freely depending on where the demand is throughout the system, and that'll provide a loop. It's also one of the key components for the Public Facilities Authority funding option associated with that. Looping is definitely, well, because of its inherent value, it's scored higher as part of a project and it provides more points in the application process. So that's definitely a good best practice to include as part of the project, and that's what we've done. The 3rd Street South, again, I've noted that there's a 2-inch service line that feeds multiple properties, and we're proposing to replace that with physical water. The drainage improvements, or storm sewer, if you will, being discussed is concrete pipe and structures along with the new curb and gutter. As I mentioned previously, the curb and gutter ultimately directs the flow to catch basins and storm sewer structures so that it can be collected. It doesn't sit on the edge of the road or in the yards. There will be some instances where some ditches remain after construction simply because they're so deep right now that we can't pick them up with storm sewer, but that's a final or a design process that we'll definitely work through as part of the process. So. The next page identifies the cost participation on county roads. As I mentioned, CASA 60 is within the project area. This is based on Wright County's typical cooperative agreement process. The city and the county would need to enter into a cooperative agreement as part of the project to identify these cost participation and funding mechanisms. But as you can see there, the majority of the work, with the exception of the concrete curb and gutter and the storm sewer, is funded by the county. So that's a benefit to the city as it relates to a county road within a project area. The county has its cost participation policy that they follow, and so they actually contribute funds to the improvement rather than requiring the city to foot the bill. So the estimated project cost summary slide identifies all the Wright County participation as well as the city participation. So ultimately, as we've calculated it based on their participation policy, and this will change as we go through the design as the quantities become more refined, but this is a really good estimate right now. Of the total $6.6 million, Wright County's portion would be approximately $875,000, with the remaining $5.77 being the city's cost as the estimate exists today. The funding sources, we've talked about a few of them, but obviously the county, the city capital improvement fund, and then assessments. Assessments have been incorporated into this project. We had some discussions in March about whether or not assessments should be a part of the project or not. Council direction seemed to be moving forward with that since the city has an assessment policy. Certainly that's entirely up to you, but it's been identified as a funding source as part of this report, and is one of the reasons we're recommending an open house and a public hearing as part of the improvements. The process has been set up so that we're moving in accordance with assessment requirements through the state. Certainly it's council's decision as to whether or not to proceed with those up until the final assessment hearing. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of time between now and then, but we're making sure that we're following the process should you elect to pursue those, and that's the way this has been set up. Finally, the Public Facilities Authority, that's a program that we have used on other projects. Basically allows the city to obtain funding and financing through the Public Facilities Authority using the state of Minnesota's bonding capacity, which ultimately results in lower interest rates on any loans taken as part of that process and which are eligible for PFA funding. The next slide identifies estimated assessments associated with the improvements. The curb and gutter, well, all items actually listed there with the exception of sidewalk, are identified as 30% accessible to the benefiting property. So that means 70% of the entire project cost is still paid by the city, but 30% of the project would be collected in assessments. And you can see the rates, whether that be for curb and gutter street or the utilities, what that rate is per foot or per each water service or sewer service. The total estimated assessments associated with the improvements are approximately $1.7 million. So that's a funding component of the overall $6 million project that would come from assessments. Project schedule, currently, this is the preliminary engineering report that you received in your packets. We're recommending that the public hearing be conducted in July at the regularly scheduled council meeting, with the open house being held as previously approved on the agenda here in June. That would provide for the plans and specifications being complete in March of 2021. Council could authorize the project to be advertised at that point. That would provide for an April bid opening with May construction starting. You'll notice in the construction column there, we've identified June 21 through September of 2022. Has not been completely finalized yet, but given the importance of access within this area, and particularly within the fire hall area, we definitely don't want this entire project area opened up at one time, because that could lead to a lot of problems, such as gravel streets through the winter, and we really don't believe that we need to deal with that. And ultimately, leaving the schedule more flexible by creating phases, we believe will bring better prices, so that contractors have the opportunity to complete one phase perhaps in 2021 and complete the second or third. However, this project gets split up in phases, and those are discussions that we'll be having. Provides them more flexibility with their scheduling and allows for better pricing. So that's the way it's been contemplated currently. Certainly, I think the project, if it was really pushed, could be completed in one construction season, but when you do that, you run the risk of increasing your project cost. So that's why you see June 2021 to September of 2022. And those details, the phasing plan will be sorted out as part of the next process, which would be design. And then the final assessment hearing and the adoption of the assessment rule would be in November of 22. That's ultimately when the project would be complete. The assessments would be certified to the county for taxes payable then in 2023. So that's how the schedule lays out. And with that, before I get to the memo and the resolution, I'll pause and see if there's any questions that I might answer for the council.
I have a question. You were just giving the projected timeline. So between June 2021 and 2022 September, how does that affect like our Montrose days?
And that's
They're like right here in this for 2021.
Yeah, and that's one of the key components as part of the phasing plan that'll be identified. Most communities have a city celebration that we work around as part of the process. I've actually been working on a downtown improvement project in another community this year. Unfortunately, similar to everybody else, theirs was canceled. Their celebration was canceled due to the circumstances. But the project was physically set up in stages where their parade route, things of that nature, all the events that they hold are very particular. They've been that way for a number of years. We set the project phasing up so that the first phase of the project, they either started it and were able to complete it by the 4th of July, or they could not start it until after the 4th of July to preserve that asset for the community celebration. So there's a multitude of options for working through that. So I don't anticipate that being a problem at all. Might be an inconvenience for a portion of it, but that's where we'll work really closely to make sure that that doesn't happen. So.
Well, their event is the third weekend in August. So they are anticipating now going out to the regional park just because of this, but just wondering if they would really need to do that for next year, or if they could still hold it here.
I think ideally the desire of the committee or the council, if that's shared with staff, we can certainly make whatever decision you guys make happen. So.
Anybody else have any questions?
So if there's no other questions, the item in your packets this evening is actually a resolution receiving the report and calling for a hearing on the improvement. And before you take action on that, I just did want to point out one of my typos. It identified in part 2 of page 2, it identified the public hearing as the 13th day of July 2020 in the council chambers of the City Hall. That should be modified to council chambers of the community center. I just wanted to point that out. And then similarly, I enclosed the public hearing notice for your information, and that lists City Hall as well, but we'll make that modification to the community center and the community center address.
So we should have a pre-hearing before we decide exactly what it is.
Pardon, I did not hear that part.
We usually have the preliminary, or whatever you want to call it, explain it to the people before we actually vote it in.
Yeah, so council member, the item in your packet this evening is actually calling for the public hearing. That's the point at which we would present to the public. And in addition to that, we're recommending that open house, which you approved in the consent agenda. That provides more of an informal opportunity for residents to come in and ask questions about their particular lot, and then it gives us an opportunity to talk to them about that. And then at the public hearing, if there are concerns that people want to enter into the record, they'd have an opportunity to speak, provide that information to you, and that can be recorded as part of the record before council decides whether or not to move to the next step, which is actually the design or the plans and specifications. Yep.
Okay.
Jared, you'll be getting me the new resolution and the public hearing notice with the corrections?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
In doing the public hearing then, Jared, are you going to send out letters to each person each home that is affected?
Yeah, that's a great question. So each property owner affected or currently abutting the improvements will get a personalized letter. And in that letter, my intent, since the public hearing notice will be published in the paper as well, my intent would be to utilize one letter identifying the open house date as well as the public hearing date in the same letter. But yes, every resident or property owner along the project will get an individual letter. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-17 with the changes to the address on the public hearing notice.
I'll second.
Kirby?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
I'll vote aye, Nicole. Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you, Council. The next item in your packets this evening is regarding biosolids. I know this has been a topic that's been discussed for a couple of years as part of the city, but this memo, and I know it's lengthy and it's got a lot of information in it, but I definitely wanted to provide it to you so that you had some background. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to summarize it just generally. So by way of background, in 2004, when the wastewater treatment plant was constructed, the biological process associated with the wastewater facility was changed. Ultimately, one of those changes was a biosolids storage tank was constructed as part of that improvement. Over time, the sludge storage tank has filled, and currently in its existing state, it's too thick to pump and remove. So that's the discussion that's been going on, knowing that the process requires biosolid storage. Our storage tank is getting full and it's too thick to pump at this point. So investigating a solution, the most cost-effective solution to dispose of those biosolids is where we're at. The tank itself is approximately 650,000 gallons. And without getting too much into detail about biosolids, typical biosolids within a biosolid storage tank is 2% solids. Sample that staff was able to obtain is closer to the magnitude of 7%. So it's thick. If you think of making pancake batter, the really runny batter is like the 2%, and that really thick stuff that drops on your griddle, that's more like 7.
I think we got it, Jared.
Okay.
No, we're gonna never eat pancakes again, Jared, thanks. I'm taking your one.
Some people like visuals. I'm a visual learner sometimes. Sorry for having to show So, but at any rate, just moving along, the biosolids removal options that were back in 2015, the first option that was considered was trucking the material over to the Buffalo wastewater treatment plant. Given the current state of the biosolids, that's not an option currently, but moving forward, that's certainly something that council might consider. I believe it was last year, a proposal was presented with a drum filter and vacuum system to clean that biosolids tank out. That was in the order of magnitude of $850,000 to $1 million. As recently as this winter, we contacted Fergus Pump and Power, who is a biosolids application company. They deal with biosolids nearly every day of their life or of their existence, and they submitted a proposal which involves removing the biosolids from the tank. So basically they're going to liquefy that enough to get it through a pump, pump it into dewatering bags out on the site, and allow those bags to dewater. Basically allow gravity to do some more work and settle out the liquid from the solid. That liquid will then be pumped back to the front of the plant. There will be some operational things that need to be monitored as part of that, but not a big deal, certainly, as part of that process. And their estimate that they provided was approximately, when all things considered, whether it be land applied on an agricultural field or whether it be landfill applied, which are both options. We're not sure exactly which option that will be yet. It depends a lot on the nutrient value or the nitrogen content of the biosolids. The sample that was taken by staff seemed to indicate a low nitrogen level, which for a fertilizer product, you want higher nitrogen and lower. So as part of the process, if you move forward with this, samples will be collected during that biosolids removal process from the tank, and then we'll be able to determine the nutrient value. And with that, we'll determine a path forward, whether it's land applied or whether it should simply be taken to a landfill and landfilled. But the cost associated with that is approximately 1/3 of the previous proposal, and it's in the order of $250,000 to $300,000 for cleaning those biosolids tanks out. So the other important part of that is we know that the biosolids need to be removed, but moving forward, there are definitely some things that should be considered as part of that process. And one of them is, if the tank's going to be empty, we recommend that the interior of the tank be evaluated when it's empty, just to make sure that there's not any structural repairs that need to be made as part of the process. Certainly we're not anticipating any. We do know that the mixing equipment is going to need a little TLC because it's currently not operating, but that should certainly be looked at. And then the second, and probably more important, is considering the future biosolids disposal and what the city's policy or process is going to be for that. Certainly, the first option considered back in 2015 with the city of Buffalo is still an option. That would have to be discussed with them. If the city's interested in land applying biosolids, that's something that can be considered. But ultimately, I bring that to your attention so that it's incorporated as part of the future capital process moving forward. So the city's planning for the biosolids to be disposed of, and then not going through a process like this to clean the tank moving forward. So in the summary and considerations, ultimately, like I mentioned, they're proposing to bring a geotextile bag on site that would likely sit over winter to allow that freeze thaw to help the water expand when it freezes and break down any water that's within the solids, allowing it to drain out through the geotextile and then either be land applied or land filled in 2021. So our recommendation is to move forward with the Fergus Power and Pump proposal included in your packets this evening. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Excuse me, didn't we have a deal that Sean set up to remove that at one time?
I was trucking at Buffalo. They didn't want it last year.
Oh, so that deal was null and void?
Right. They'll take fresh stuff. Our stuff is too old. It's as old as the plant.
Okay.
Should have been hauling it a year.
Yeah, because I thought he even bought a truck from you or something to haul it with.
Well, we can't get it out of the tank.
That's too thick, remember it's pancake back.
Sell the truck with the fertilizer.
All right, we'll need a motion then to move forward on this.
Does this option create any terrible odors for anybody who may be living near there?
Just rolling.
I mean, there's not a lot of houses by there, but there are a couple, so I mean.
I definitely won't say absolutely not, because anytime that you say absolutely not, you're dealing with wastewater, that's a bad idea. I'm not anticipating significant, but there is a potential that there will be some odors depending on the prevailing wind direction throughout the process. Ultimately, it's biosolids and it needs to be remixed to get it out of the tank, and that's part of that process. Historically, biosolids has more of an earthy smell, so it'll be different, but it's not similar to cattle feedlot or anything like that. So.
Okay. If the council were to move forward with that option, how long from start to finish?
The proposal identified approximately I think they were talking about approximately 6 weeks for the removal, and then the dewatering would last a lot longer. It would last throughout the winter. And then next spring, summer, we'd evaluate it to make sure that the pancake batter's thick enough before we
The
all.
removal and confined space stuff would be 6 weeks.
Yeah, and they're trained and all that, and certainly we notify you when they get on site.
That's why I
say,
asked.
yeah, absolutely.
And are we talking about starting this year yet, or is this planned for next year?
Pending council's action this evening, that would definitely start this year, as soon as possible. As soon as we can get on their schedule. If council moves forward with it tonight, we'll call them tomorrow morning first thing.
Any other questions? The motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to move forward with the Fergus Power and Pump proposal. I don't think we can kick this can down the road too much longer.
I'll second that.
Okay. I will vote aye, and Nicole?
Aye.
Kirby?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Lane?
Mayor and Council, I've got a few things. The Gaga Ball game is done over here. It's in the park. He finished it up and then we signed off on
Did you try it out? Is it fun?
No, I went inside it, but I didn't play. And let's go back to our compost pile. We've been having trouble with people dropping off stuff they're not supposed to. But we've caught them and we've had them clean it up, and they've done a good job of it. What I'm proposing is putting a couple more cameras out there, better ones. Be a couple $100 to put some better cameras out there where you can pick up license plate numbers. I'm trying out a camera right now. And then I've got another proposal. I'm working with Minnesota Compost or something. I just forgot their name. They'll come and haul all that compost, all those big logs, everything out of there for $6 a yard. You figured it'd be a couple $1,000. They'll come and get it all in one day. And we start from scratch, fresh. And at the same time, they'll bring some screened compost back for residents to pick up. And then hopefully we can keep track of it, roll it, make our own compost where we don't have to rely on anybody. But they would pick it up every year if we wanted them to. That pile's been there as long as I've been here.
It's been quite a while.
Right.
And we're supposed to be rolling that and working that frequently, aren't we?
Right, and it's too big to even try to move.
And they would come clear everything out of there?
Yep, everything would be bare ground. And nobody can hide anything behind the pile because it won't be there.
And what's the estimated cost of this?
He said $6 a yard. He figured a couple $1,000. I'm figuring $3.
And that's in our budget to do that?
That I don't know. I haven't talked to Wendy on that. I just wanted to bring it up. I mean, $3,000 isn't much.
Yeah, yes.
She's up.
Wendy said it falls under our garbage account. We have plenty of money in there.
Okay. When would you look at, oh, sorry. When would you look at doing that then?
I'd have to get a hold of them tomorrow, set a schedule with them, and they start as soon as they can. We'd have to burn it, of course, to try to get rid of all the brush, but they'll take all the ash, everything.
You gotta burn it before they take anything?
Yeah. Well, they can start on the compost if we burn the brush. But they want to take it all in one day, so I'll just schedule it with them and we'll have it done.
And then moving forward, what would the schedule be for like maintaining that?
We'd have to roll it every once in a while.
And then burn it?
Burn it, yeah. And we just gotta keep the people out of there with the big stuff.
If we can keep the pile 20 by 20 by 20, we can burn it locally. If we get over 20 by 20 by 20, now we have to get the DNR involved.
Right.
So if we keep it 20 by 20 by 20, either I or one of the fire wardens around here can sign a permit saying, light her up.
And the DNR is getting pretty sticky on that. And we are permitted by them, so.
Right. So do you want a motion then for us to give the authorization to move forward?
Be nice if you would.
Okay. Well, there you have it. There's a motion for you to move forward, looking into taking care of the compost area.
And what about the cameras?
And purchasing upgraded cameras to zoom in on.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Nicole? Aye. I'll vote aye. Lloyd?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Kirby?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And then as far as mosquito spraying, put the briquettes in all the ponds. They're starting to pick up a little bit, so towards maybe the end of the week, we'll start spraying
The mosquitoes are terrible.
in certain areas. But
Anywhere there's a sun, there you can just see them swarming.
we'll be treating those ponds again.
Okay.
And then also, on the Forest Creek area, Breckenridge, they're gonna seal coat Friday. Then that project will be all done, the crack fill, now they're gonna seal coat. Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple questions on just general stuff. How's the wastewater treatment plant?
As far as,
Or-
oh, the water.
Sorry, yes,
The
water.
water plant,
Yep.
we're having trouble getting some parts through our electronics people.
Okay,
I figured it'd be August.
and when that one's up, we take this one down, right?
Yep.
Okay.
There's a couple wells they have to pull and then move the piping and tear the building down.
Jared, do we have any new updates on the First Street North?
That's on the road stuff,
The road? That's all in this?
you know,
As part of the capital improvement plan
For
with
the street improvement plan?
street maintenance.
The street maintenance.
Yeah, so the update on the pavement portion of the capital improvement plan is we've collected all the data, and that report will be written here this month. I'm anticipating that I'll be bringing that component of it to you in July. Yep.
Have you guys, when can we expect them to, on the grant on regional park, is that July as well?
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
One more. The street over in the regional park, you know, the gravel that's over
Yep.
there?
Yep.
How are we maintaining that, continuing to maintain that?
we're just spraying the weeds on it. I mean, we're not adding anything to it.
Right, because it's totally covered in weeds, that's what I'm
Right.
asking. So
Right.
we're just spraying, we sprayed it?
We haven't, we sprayed it, we just got done with all the parks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll spray that road, then we'll spray the one, the back road going up to Breckenridge.
Okay, okay.
So people can walk on that. We need a real calm day for that because we're gonna kill everything. So,
And the plots that are in the garden area, I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. Do we just let them grow since nobody's taken them, or how are we?
I thought that most of them were taken or not, no?
No, only 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think 6, and maybe 2. So that there's open 1, 3, 5. There's like 4 of them that are open. And they're just overgrown, and so how do we, what do we do?
I guess we just mow them off.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of pain for the person that takes it over next, with all the vegetation in there.
I'm good now.
All right, and I was gonna also mention that the trail on 25 is in, but then we gotta come back and do a bunch of landscaping, plant the grass and stuff like that. And then, as soon as I hear on Emerson, they're gonna put the second lift over here on Emerson that we did last year. I'll let you know on that. Anything else?
I'm good.
Are you sending out bids for over there at Pheasant Hills for that problem over there?
No, that's what we're gonna be talking about once this road thing comes through.
Okay.
I've had somebody look at it, now I just have to go over it with the engineers.
Okay.
Anything else for Wayne? All right, nothing under old business, and then new business, I believe is James.
I could start over, James, if you want me to. Okay. I provided you with the city council request. I just wanted to give you the background on this. In 2000, they entered into a ground lease with the city, Quest Wireless did, to build a tower, construct a tower on city property. Then in 2005, it was amended because Quest was assigning all its leasehold interest rights and obligations to Verizon Wireless. And then in 2017, it was amended one more time because Verizon had American Tower. They basically manage everything for them. And so now American Tower came to us and asked if we would amend the lease. They had some concerns about Verizon isn't paying them the same amount of rent as we're getting from American Tower, which James can talk about that a little bit more, but they negotiated with Verizon before they came to the city to take the lease over for Verizon. So basically, I'm going to say to you, that's not our problem. But as I told you, James has negotiated a lot of these contracts for other cities, and that rent he said that we are getting now is not out of line. That's what most cities get. And then the escalation rate, I talked a little bit about that again. James said that 2% is low. What cities typically do is they have a rate of the consumer price index or 5%, whichever one is higher. And so I'll let him talk about that a little bit more. And then the signing bonus of $15,000 sounds good, and the $200 per month revenue share, but the truth of the matter is that over the course of the contract, we're going to lose $140,000. So it's really not that great of a deal. And I did call her. I said to her, she said the city council does not have to agree to do this. They're just proposing it. And I said to her, well, what will happen when you discontinue the use of the tower? And she did not give me an answer. And in my opinion, they're not going to do that because what they're trying to do is upgrade to 5G. They're just trying to maximize their profits to do that. So I will let James take it over from here because he has a lot of experience with this. And then if you have any questions, just make sure you ask him.
Thank you, Deb. Mayor, members of the council, the terms that American Tower is proposing are less favorable than the terms that the city has now. Instead, that's, like, rent is a decrease of $250 a month. They're changing the escalation clause from a fixed 5% increase annually to a fixed 2% increase annually. Typically, what I see in these contracts is the contract has an escalation clause that includes an increase based on the consumer price index or 5%, whichever is greater. I know these communications companies like to have some certainty about how much they'll be paying from year to year, so they don't like the consumer price index type of increase. But when cities have agreed to just a flat percentage, 5% is typically what I see. So I think 2% is low in that regard. They talk about a rent guarantee through July 31st, 2030. But if they want to stay on the pole, they're going to have to pay the city rent. The signing bonus is to sweeten the deal, but over the course of the contract, the city would make significantly more. And the $200 per month revenue share is what is already in the agreement, so that's not a change. If American Tower, if they did want to discontinue or terminate this contract, they would have to remove their equipment from the tower, and that would be a cost to them. In addition, they have to find some other place to put the equipment. So that is going to be an additional cost for them. They say that they're losing money on the site, but they haven't provided any numbers to corroborate that. So the options for the city would be to tell American Tower we're not interested in renegotiating or amending the contract at this time, or if the city wanted to be certain that American Tower continued to utilize that pole, then they could agree to these terms or engage in some additional negotiation with the company.
We're going to take a 5-minute to change on the desk.
obviously, American Tower is under contract with modification as well as. And perhaps it's just-
Yes.
You ready then?
Right.
All right, we're back, guys.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay.
Was there questions down there?
I don't think the city should amend the agreement if it's, you know, they're trying to reduce all of this stuff, especially, as you said, the escalation rate would be much lower than it is now. I don't think it's, they're using the city property, I think it should be more favorable towards us than it should be towards somebody who wants to rent our space.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to be held financial responsibility for their upgrade to 5G.
When is the contract up?
I was going to add to my comments that the original contract, the original lease was executed in 2000, it's now 2020. In 2017, Verizon agreed to 8 5-year extensions of the contract. So that would take the contract through 2065. That 8 5-year extensions is a long time for one of these contracts. And again, it's the company's looking for as much stability as they can with their equipment.
You said it's a fixed escalation rate right now?
Correct.
Okay.
The current escalation rate is 5%, and then commencing on August 1st, 2025, the increase is 2%. So what they're bargaining for here is 5 years shifted from 5% to 2%.
Well, if they want stability in the pricing, I would suggest that we just maintain what it is and give all the stability in the world.
James, should we have some type of a motion on this depending on what?
Right, I think the council should make a motion one way or the other on how they'd like us to proceed.
Well, I'll make a motion that we adhere to our existing contract with American Tower and not make any changes to it.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Lloyd?
Aye.
Nicole? Aye. Tom?
Aye.
I'll vote aye, and Kirby?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, next we just have the upcoming meetings, which is this week's planning and zoning at 7 o'clock here at the community center. EDA will be meeting June 16th at the community center. Next city council workshop is June 22nd. Then we have the open house on June 29th. Park and Rec is July 2nd. Next planning and zoning is July 8th. Regular city council is July 13th. Public hearing for the 2021 downtown project is July 13th. EDA again is July 21st. And city council workshop July 27th.
Can I just interject too? I did put the June 22nd workshop on here because that's the 4th Monday of the month. But with the open house on the 29th, and right now, I don't foresee anything for the agenda. We probably won't have the workshop, but I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Acknowledgements, I want to again acknowledge the Mountain Fire Department for all their birthday parades and everything that they've been doing. Residents absolutely love them. They get so excited, all the kids do, so thank you and you guys for doing all that. And city staff for getting us through this COVID stuff. It's been a struggle and multiple challenges, but I do want to thank them for everything that they've been doing, so. Anybody else?
I think you covered everything.
I only did 2 this time, so I'm pretty good. Is there a motion then to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are closed.
Thank you.
Yes. The acknowledgement, just to,
Thank you.
Montrose Fire Department.